Okay, so we're motoring through these lessons on how to find the perfect wedding date. So far we've downloaded an ephemeris, we've learned how to use it, we've identified our range of dates, we found when Mercury, Venus and Mars were retrograde. We've also found the changing days when a planet is changing signs from, say, Sagittarius into the sign of Capricorn. We've eliminated or highlighted those changing days because we want to keep an eye on them, but maybe not use them. They're like our backup plan. Then we have also looked at when Venus wasn't strong, when the moon wasn't strong, and also when Mercury wasn't strong. And we've eliminated those dates too. Now we're going to start building in value. We're going to start looking for what we really do want. And so in this one, we are absolutely focusing on the positive, but again, using the skills that you've already got. So let's find out a little bit more. So like I said, in the last one, we're going to look for when Venus is her best and also when the moon is strong. So using this chart of planetary dignities, and you can find this anywhere on the internet, just type in planetary dignities. When is Venus strong? Which signs is she strong in? And her two favorite ones are Taurus and Libra. They're the two that she rules. And she's got a special affinity to the sign of Pisces. So we're going to look for when Venus is in the sign of Taurus and Libra. I can guarantee she's not going to be in the sign of Taurus because Venus is always relatively close to the sun. And so I just know it's the wrong time of year for her to be in the sign of Taurus, but she could very well be in the sign of Libra and possibly in the sign of Pisces. So let's find out. So we're going to use the same. Oh, and before we do that, we're also going to identify the moon when it's in the sign of Cancer and also when it's in the sign of Taurus. They're also very beneficial times. So we're going to look for all of those markers on our ephemeris. So you'll see I'm starting to use kind of positive colours now. So right away in November, we've identified that Venus has gone into the sign of Libra. And in terms of the moon, we can see that she's in the sign of Cancer here, and also in the sign of Taurus here. You can also see that in turquoise, I've done these kind of moon changeover days where she may be in a good sign, she might not be, but it's one of those dates just to check. So I've highlighted those in turquoise. And then I've done the same with December. And you see she's very, very happy here. And then I've done the same in January. There was no sort of, like, Libra's not really, she's not really happy and she's not really sad in these signs. She's just kind of normal. But the moon is very happy in Taurus here and in Cancer here. And then in February, we've got the moon in Taurus and the moon in Cancer again. Again, there's no sort of exalted Venus, but we can definitely look for a time when Venus is looking good anyway. In a different way, we can maybe find Venus that has good aspects. So let's mark those on our calendar, and you'll see now that the calendar is really looking different. Here Venus was in quite a good sign. However, in November, we also know that Mercury was retrograde and Mercury was also not in a good sign. So there's a lot of confliction here. However, the 9th of November is our only really good day. And is worth looking at further. We can see in December now that the 2nd and 3rd and the 4th look quite positive, but the rest of December is negligible. And then in January, we can see the 18th, 19th, 20th, and the 22nd to the 25th. In particular, the 19th and the 24th look really strong. And in February, our two top dates are the 15th and the 20th. And so we've really started to narrow it down now. Now, all of these white ones are kind of, they're not really positive days and they're not really negative days. And there's loads of those. So if none of these work out, it's worth us being aware of these white days. And we've got enough white days that we might want to eliminate these amber ones. But I'm still going to hold on to these dates just in case. But if we had to choose between these amber dates or these turquoise dates, I'll go with the turquoise. So, you know, we can now start to prioritize them, you know. So now I've blocked it out completely. You'll see all of the great days are the green ones. The next ones I will consider will be the turquoise. And then I might consider the amber ones because they might have something, you know, like the moon might be just changing into the right sign. And then last of all, the white dates. But really, I think January and February are looking pretty positive. So yeah, we have eliminated the less beneficial dates. Now what we're going to be doing in the next few sessions is we're going to be narrowing down the options to a short list. Well, I think we've just done that actually. But we're now going to start to consider the moon's last aspect and something called void of course moon. And that's going to take a bit of explaining, but it's not impossible. Then we'll start to talk a little bit about perfecting your time. So for instance, you know, I know my couple would like to have a sunset wedding. And I also happen to know that they would like to get married in and around Hawaii. So I'm going to be looking at the Hawaii time zone and also around sunset. So that's going to factor into my inquiries. Eventually, we are going to also, with the short list of dates, we're going to be looking at which dates work best with the bride and groom's charts. Now, you know, I studied a lot of people's charts in terms of their wedding day. And yes, they nearly always figure and factor into the charts of the people getting married. You know, like getting married is such a big thing, you know, that, you know, any kind of big thing I always see registered somewhere in somebody's charts. So again, the true date for the marriage may well become apparent when I'm checking them through and comparing them to the bride and groom's charts. And then hopefully we'll be able to identify which is the best date. And we might have a choice of two, but I'm really quite hopeful that we're going to narrow it really down. Now, there are a couple of things I would just like to share with you in terms of getting this right. You know, there is no right day as such. You know, all we can do is plan for the very, very best day that we can conceive of. I do know I was following a blog with two very well-known astrologers that were getting married. And it was quite a long time ago. I think it was maybe about 8 or 9 years ago. And I remember them actually writing that they were just going to get married and that they didn't check their wedding chart. They just thought, you know, true love would win out. You know, I really don't think that's a bad idea, you know. But when I was looking at the charts of lots of famous people, ones that have been married once or twice, and looking at divorces and looking at which divorces seemed messier, according to what was reported in the news, what I noticed was that there was a higher incidence of where people were marrying with the retrogrades that I've already mentioned. And when they didn't have really good marriage charts, that those marriages, when they failed, they really failed. And the divorces, the custody and things like that were just really ugly. And so, you know, I have noticed that, you know, when people have a good date, it's not to say they will stay married. But one of the things I've noticed is that when they do separate, if they do separate, it tends to be much kinder and with a lot more dignity. And so I think that's really worth bearing that in mind. You know, if you're going to look for a date, get the absolute best date possible, because at some level, the date that you kind of change the nature of your relationship astrologically, it really represents how your marriage will take place. You know, it's less about the wedding day, but more about the conduct of both of you, like the respect you'll give each other, you'll give to yourselves and each other. And so I really think the best date is absolutely essential. The more you can work on that, the better off you'll both be. Because, you know, we can't guarantee that you're not going to have ups and downs. You know, and life can sometimes throw really impossible things our way that you can't really prepare for, you know, and, you know, with the greatest will in the world, some people do fall apart. And so, you know, in those times, having the best chart available, I think, is almost like an insurance policy. So anyway, in the next session, we will be looking at how to look at the void of course moon. and also the moon's last aspect, because that will again knock out a little bit more, but also start to tune into the vibration of that particular wedding date in quite a miraculous way. So let's go there now and learn a bit more.